Well, I think vulnerability it's a very tough thing to feel. I don't think any of us are comfortable in it. I define it as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure, and that's not comfortable for any of us. But if you think about every one of our most meaningful experiences in our lives, at the foundation of those is vulnerability. Love, joy, trust, creativity. None of those can exist outside of vulnerability. And so I think we need to have a conversation about what it takes to show up and dare greatly, what it takes to put ourselves on the line and risk even when there are no guarantees.
And how do we get to that point with our obsession of perfection? We all want to be that perfect image, that perfect person, not only in our as our image, but to those around us, even close to us.
No, I agree 100%, and I'm a totally recovering perfectionist. I think we start by dispelling some of the myths about vulnerability. I think one of the reasons why it's so difficult to be vulnerable is because we think it's weakness. Right. We think we need to, armor up in the morning, go out, be our toughest self, kick butt, take names. But if we really stop and start to dispel that myth that vulnerability is weakness, what we'll find, when I ask people what is vulnerability, they say things like waiting for their mammogram results, starting a new business, sending their kid off to try out for choir when they're so excited and, mom and dad are not too sure that that's going to happen, but they're so proud of them for wanting it. When you ask people really what is vulnerable about your life, you don't hear weakness, you hear courage. And so I think the first step is to really demystify what is vulnerability and what isn't it. Another big myth about vulnerability is that it's kind of letting it all hang out. And that's just off base. I always say, live tweeting your fight with your husband, not vulnerability. It's bad judgment maybe, but not vulnerability. Vulnerability is about sharing parts of ourselves with people who've earned the right to hear our story.
And how do we choose those people?
I think over time, and I think part of vulnerability, there's a really important relationship between vulnerability and trust. And I think it's a little bit at a time. It's that I trust you with a part of me that's not maybe my most fragile part, and I see if you honor that giving. Do you honor that sharing? And if so, that's how we build trust and that's how we build relationships. And the one thing I know for sure, having studied all this for the last dozen years, is that there is no trust without vulnerability, and there are no relationships without vulnerability and trust. And so it's the glue that holds everything together.
And in the end, ultimately helps us live a more fulfilling life.
Absolutely, there's no question. I mean, I think the one thing I say fairly often, because I feel it so passionately, is yes, it feels dangerous to be vulnerable, and it feels scary, but I don't think it ever feels as scary and dangerous as staying on the outside of our lives, looking in, wondering what would have happened had I shown up.
Yes, and how do we start though? I mean, how do we even take that first step?
I think we recognize a couple people in our lives, maybe just even one, who we can do that with. And I think one of the things that we all have a tendency to do, myself included, is we steamroll over those people in order to get the acceptance and attention of people who don't matter. So I think we start by recognizing, where are my real relationships, where is the real intimacy and trust, and how can I try on this vulnerability, how can I try to dare greatly with those people. The people that if I try something new and I suck at it and I fail, that person like my husband who looks at me and said, yeah man, but you were so brave.
Is there any advice you have for us parents as to possibly how to start teaching our children to live like this?
As a parent, it's tough, and I think unfortunately the answer is an answer that I hate, which is I think we have to be the adults we want them to grow up to be. So if we want our kids to dare greatly, they have to watch us dare greatly. They have to watch us try, they have to watch us succeed, and they have to watch us fail. And we have to have honest conversations with them about, if I get a bad book review or something, I share that with my kids, and I share that it hurts my feelings, and I share that I have to let go of that. But it's a hard process, so that when someone makes fun of them at school or something happens, they know that the people they trust and respect and love the most have also had that shared experience.
What do you hope people get from your book in the end, the overall message you want them to take away, or what are you hoping to do with your book?
That we're all in this together, and the pretending and the performing and pleasing is just moving us further and further apart. And I've been doing this research, I started the research right before 9/11, and I've watched over the last 12 years how fear just has a knife to our throats in this country. And I think We're tired of being afraid. And I think we all want to be brave. And being brave is being vulnerable.
I know you've been on national circuit, but what does it feel like to be back in Texas right here in your home state?
Oh, well, first of all, hook 'em horns. I went to UT, so I love it here. We love it here. I'm at Book People tonight. This is completely on my bucket list, so I've been sitting in every chair that every Texan has sat in before me, rubbing it and saying, oh, okay.
That's good.
So I couldn't be happier than to be here.